What's even more unsettling than discovering lipstick on your husband's collar? Finding it documented on his credit card statement. I shared this realization with my therapist the day after I uncovered everything. While she maintained her professional demeanor, I noticed a subtle expression of surprise flicker across her face. Even the most seasoned professionals are taken aback by the composed demeanor of a woman who has been betrayed, but chooses not to destruct her own life in retaliation. My name is Naomi, and recounting this story still makes me uneasy. Just 3 months ago, I was a thriving business owner in what I believed was a content marriage. Over our 15-year union, my husband Eric and I had cultivated our lives together while I simultaneously nurtured my consulting firm from humble beginnings to a successful enterprise employing 27 individuals. Eric purportedly embraced my ambitions, celebrated my achievements, and appeared genuinely proud of my accomplishments. I should have recognized the signs. Success can make certain individuals feel inadequate. It all began with an alert from our joint American Express account. Not a charge for $412 at La Petite Maison, an intimate French restaurant across town that Eric and I had visited exactly once for our anniversary 3 years ago. The date was significant. It was a Tuesday when he was supposedly at a regional sales conference in Phoenix. Something cold and sharp settled in my stomach. I've always had excellent instincts in business. The same instinct that told me when a client was lying or when a competitor was vulnerable. Now it screamed that something was very wrong in my marriage. I didn't confront him immediately. That's what he would have expected. Tears, accusations, the standard betrayed wife routine that gives a cheating husband the upper hand. The script that lets him manage your reaction rather than face his actions. Instead, I did what I do best. Research. I hired a private investigator, not the sleazy kind from horror films, but a digital forensic specialist who charged an obscene hourly rate and was worth every penny. Within a week, I had everything. Her name, Alexis Ben. At 42 years old, I discovered my husband's affair with Ed, a 28-year-old marketing coordinator at a downtown firm. The numerous text messages exchanged between them left me feeling physically ill. It wasn't just the intimacy that pained me, but also how my husband spoke about me to her. He portrayed me as someone uninterested in romance, solely focused on business. Despite feeling disconnected, I chose to stay due to financial complexities. The messages felt like sharp knives, stabbing at my trust and emotions. A private investigator had meticulously documented 7 supposed business trips over the past year that were, in reality, romantic retreats with Alexis. Receipts for fancy dinners, hotel charges, and even a weekend getaway to Napa under the guise of a sales retreat further solidified the betrayal. That fateful night, as I pored over the evidence, Eric arrived home late as usual. He greeted me with a kiss on the cheek, inquired about my day with feigned interest, and casually mentioned his potential upcoming travel for client meetings. Smiling through the pain, I informed him that I had prepared his favorite dinner. As we sat down to eat, the weight of his deception loomed heavy in the air. Beneath the table, he surreptitiously scrolled through his phone, assuming that I hadn't noticed. "You seem quiet tonight," he finally remarked when the silence became too palpable. Raising my gaze from my plate, I scrutinized his familiar face that I had woken up to for 15 years, now somehow belonging in part to someone else. "Just contemplating a potential new hire," I replied. "Someone who has the potential to revolutionize things at the company." "That's my girl," he said with a condescending smile that I suddenly found myself detesting. Always focused on the business, I nodded and took a sip of wine, allowing the blueprint to take shape in my mind. Eric wasn't entirely incorrect. I was always contemplating business. In the realm of business, emotions were not the driving force when faced with a threat. Rather, it demanded strategizing, pinpointing leverage, and transforming vulnerability into an opportunity. In fact, I declared, carefully placing my glass down, "I believe this could be my most brilliant staffing decision yet." He had already tuned out, turning to his phone screen. As my partner slept beside me, I quietly opened my laptop and navigated to Alexis Bennett's resume and social media profiles. She appeared to be a young and ambitious professional with the right amount of experience to be valuable, yet not so seasoned as to demand a top salary. Despite being currently employed, her LinkedIn activity suggested she was discreetly seeking new opportunities. By the time morning arrived, I had crafted a job listing tailored perfectly for her. A senior marketing strategist position at my consulting firm, a significant step up from her current role, offering an enticing salary and benefits package. What made this arrangement particularly intriguing was that she had no knowledge of who I was. My partner, Eric, had always maintained a clear boundary between our personal and professional lives. He had never visited my office, and in his social circles, I was simply known as Eric's wife with a business downtown. He had never even shared photos of us together on his meticulously curated social media accounts. Closing my laptop and observing the sunrise casting its warm glow on our bedroom wall, I felt a mix of excitement and I hadn't felt such a sense of power since I discovered the affair. Things were finally tipping in my favor. "Why are you up so early?" Eric mumbled from his side of the bed. I turned to him, forcing the sweetest smile I could manage, just making sure everything's set for what's to come next. The interview process progressed swiftly. I ensured I stayed behind the scenes, letting my HR director handle the initial screenings. Alexa's application came in shortly after we posted the job. Her cover letter practically brimmed with enthusiasm, and her qualifications were impressive. Despite Eric's flaws, he seemed to have a good eye for professional women. As I personally reviewed her application, I searched for any signs that she might recognize my name or our connection. But there was nothing. Eric had worked hard to erase me from his life. To her, I was probably just a distant figure, the inconvenient wife soon to be cast aside. I finally laid eyes on her in person during the final interview. I had orchestrated. I watched through the one-way glass of our conference room as my executive team conducted the formal questioning. The sound of my heart pounding seemed deafening, but I was sure no one could hear it. She, younger and undeniably beautiful, exuded confidence untouched by real disappointment. Her dark hair was styled in an expensive bob, and her designer clothes hinted at a lifestyle beyond her means. As she answered questions about marketing strategies and campaign metrics with poise, I scrutinized her face for any hint of deceit or manipulation. Surprisingly, what I found was genuine intelligence and ambition. I almost pitied her momentarily. Almost. "She's just what we need for the Anderson account," my VP of operations remarked later. "When does she start?" I immediately replied, "Make the offer today. I want her fully onboarded by next week." The day Alexis accepted our offer, Eric arrived home with a bouquet of flowers on a regular Tuesday, catching me off guard. My stomach tightened and I asked, "What's this for?" Taking the bouquet from him. Is it wrong for a husband to simply show appreciation for his wife? He gently kissed my cheek, his hand resting on my waist. I couldn't help but wonder if he had touched Alexis the same way earlier that day. Later, while he was in the shower, I decided to check his phone. I discovered a text of Alexis apologizing for not being able to meet that weekend due to a family commitment he claimed he couldn't avoid. He promised to make it up to her the following week. The family obligation turned out to be his cousin's wedding, an event he had initially tried to skip until I insisted that we attend together. It seemed he was now using me as an excuse while trying to appease me with guilt flowers. The next morning, I gave the flowers to our housekeeper. Alexis' first day at the company was a lesson in self-control for me. I stayed in my office until noon, going over reports and gearing myself up. Then, I confidently walked into the orientation lunch, introducing myself to each new employee. "Welcome to Bennett Consulting. I'm Naomi Bennett, the founder and CEO." When I approached Alexis, our eyes locked, and I searched for any sign of recognition. However, all I saw was a professional demeanor, excited and slightly intimidated upon meeting the boss. Alexis Chen, senior marketing strategist, she responded with a firm handshake. "I'm thrilled to be here. We have high hopes for you." I said, maintaining eye contact for just a moment too long. "I will closely monitor your work in the coming weeks." I kept Alexis engaged with significant projects that required frequent interaction with me. I tasked her with leading our most important client presentation, ensuring she would have to work late nights at the office. Whenever she mentioned needing to cancel personal plans, I graciously emphasized that dedication was a distinguishing trait of our company. I wondered if Eric was becoming frustrated with her sudden unavailability. In her presence, I casually made references to my husband without mentioning his name, such as, "My husband and I attended that restaurant opening last month," or "My husband's company utilizes that same vendor." Throughout, I observed her behavior, noting how she would check her phone when she thought, watching her expression fall slightly when she had to cancel another evening plan, watching her try to maintain professional composure while her personal life was being systematically disrupted. During this period, Eric's behavior shifted too. More late nights at the office, more irritability at home, more transparent lies about his whereabouts. I played my part perfectly, the oblivious work-obsessed wife who never questioned his absences because she was too preoccupied with her own career. The breaking point came during month 2. I'd assigned Alexis to a client in Phoenix, a 3-day trip that coincidentally overlapped with Eric's supposed sales conference in the same city. I knew from my continued surveillance that they had planned to meet there, their first opportunity for a rendezvous in weeks. I also knew that Eric had been complaining about me constantly in his text to her. She's completely cold these days. All she cares about is that damn company. I'm starting to think about H, how to minimize financial impact when ending a business arrangement. On the eve of Alexa's departure for Phoenix, I invited her into my office. I calmly informed her that I had decided to personally attend the Phoenix meeting, asking her to handle the Liller presentation instead. Alexis, as composed as always, expressed her concerns about the change. Recognizing her preparation for the Phoenix meeting, I assured her of my confidence in her adaptability and professionalism. As she departed to adjust to the new task, I observed her making arrangements, contemplating the impact of this shift on our plans. Upon learning that his rendezvous had been disrupted, the news arrived during dinner when he sadly disclosed, "Unfortunately, honey, the Phoenix conference has been rescheduled. I won't have to go after all." I took a sip of wine and expressed my understanding, saying, "That's a disappointment. I know how much you were anticipating it." He chuckled nervously, looking forward to a business conference, huh? I replied, "You did seem quite enthusiastic about this trip." His gaze shifted from mine as he muttered, "Just eager to close the Henderson account." Lightly, I commented, "What a coincidence. I'm actually flying to Phoenix tomorrow to cover for one of my new marketing strategists in a client meeting." With his fork paused midair, he asked, "You are?" I nodded, remarking, "Last-minute changes are part of the unpredictable nature of business." Later that night, I discreetly observed his messages from the bathroom. One read, "Can't believe the timing. Is going to Phoenix now. I have to cancel completely." A response indicated, "This is the third time you've canceled. Starting to feel like I'm not a priority." I smiled at my reflection in the mirror. The cracks were starting to show. I had given everything to this marriage, and they had treated me like nothing. Now it was time for the next phase of my plan. People underestimate quiet women. They mistake our silence for weakness, our patience for passivity, our planning for procrastination. That's their first mistake. Their second mistake is assuming we don't notice everything. I've been noticing things about Eric for 15 years. I knew his tells, his patterns, the slight shift in his voice when he was lying. I knew his passwords because he used the same ones for everything, his mother's maiden name plus our anniversary date. Such irony, using our wedding date to hide his infidelity. But more importantly, I've been noticing things about Alexis during her 2 months at my company. She was talented, driven, slightly insecure beneath her polished exterior, desperate for validation, romantic to a fault, and fundamentally decent, which would become her breaking point. After the Phoenix incident, I altered my approach. Instead of keeping them apart, I started to provide opportunities for Alexis to witness the true Eric, not the charming, attentive partner who made her feel special, but the manipulative, self-serving person I had uncovered. I decided to elevate her to lead our newly established financial services division, coincidentally the same field where Eric held a position as a regional sales director. This move would bring her into contact with his colleagues, clients, and professional circle. During the promotion meeting, I emphasized the importance of her new role. "This is a significant vote of confidence," I informed her. "You will be representing us to some of the most influential figures in the financial industry." Her expression lit up with genuine pride as she responded, "Thank you for believing in me. I won't let you down." Assuring her, I replied, "I know you won't. In fact, I would like you to accompany me for a dinner next week with key industry contacts. It's crucial for them to meet the fresh face of our financial services division." What I didn't disclose to her was that among these industry contacts were several of Eric's colleagues, who were aware of his marital status but had overlooked his infidelities for years and would easily recognize Alexis, were set to dine at Melon's, the city's most prestigious restaurant. As we waited for our guests to arrive, I engaged Alexis in casual conversation, working on establishing a connection with her. I had been mindful in the preceding weeks to position myself as a mentor, offering professional guidance, showing interest in her ideas, and fostering a relationship based on mutual esteem and confidence. "May I ask you something personal?" I inquired after our second glass of wine. Surprised, she nodded and replied, "Of course." "Are you involved with someone?" I continued. "I only asked because I've noticed moments when you seem preoccupied, as if dealing with something complex in your personal life." Her cheeks tinged with color as she confessed, "Is it that apparent?" Offering a sympathetic smile, I assured her, "Only to someone who understands." After a pause, she lowered her voice and admitted, "It's complicated. He's not exactly free." Understanding her implication, I nodded knowingly as she trailed off, her gaze reflecting a mixture of emotions. I observed with concern, but quickly reassured her that I was not making any judgments. Life is rarely straightforward or clear-cut, I reminded her. Her face relaxed with relief. He confided in me that he's been unhappy in his marriage for years. His wife is deeply engrossed in her career and hardly pays attention to him anymore, she explained. Feeling the pain of guilt as a career woman discussing this with her boss, who is also I smoothly interjected that I took no offense, acknowledging that every relationship is unique. I also mentioned that men tend to have convenient stories about their partners when seeking someone new. Before she could reply, our dinner guests arrived, three high-ranking executives from rival financial firms who all had close ties with Eric. I observed their interactions closely, noting the unease and awkwardness among them. I directed the conversation towards work-related matters, corporate events, and family topics. I subtly mentioned my husband a few times without fully disclosing. As the evening wound down, Thomas, Eric's direct supervisor, discreetly beckoned me over. Naomi, I have to ask, he began hesitantly. His voice trailed off, leaving an uneasy air between us. I gazed at him intently, prompting him to continue. Does Eric know you've hired his? He hesitated, clearly struggling to find the right words. Sensing his discomfort, I urged him to clarify. Is what, Thomas? I inquired calmly. After a moment of hesitation, he opted to retract his statement. Never mind, he muttered. Refusing to let the matter go, I prodded him to elaborate, to which he evasively backpedaled, citing that it was not his place to discuss. I accepted his reluctance with a cool nod, acknowledging the boundary he had drawn. On the journey back to the office, where Alexis had left her vehicle, she appeared unusually quiet. Sensing her unease, I prompted, Everything okay? Her response was hesitant as she divulged her unease about the men's familiarity with her despite her lack of recollection of ever meeting them before. Keeping my focus on the road ahead, I offered a plausible explanation, suggesting that perhaps they had seen her at industry functions, though her skepticism lingered in the air. The seeds of doubt were sown, prompting a need for further investigation. As the next step, the company holiday party hosted by Eric's organization loomed on the horizon, an event I typically attended in my capacity as. The supportive wife engaged in polite conversation with acquaintances who vaguely remembered her from year to year. The following week, I asked Alexis to attend the Meridian Financial Holiday Gala as our representative, emphasizing the importance of building a relationship with the company as they considered us for their marketing overhaul. Upon hearing the name Meridian Financial, Alexis' voice slightly rose in pitch. Sensing her unease, I inquired if there was a problem, to which she quickly replied that there wasn't. Unbeknownst to her, Meridian was Eric's company, and attending the gala meant she would be at the same event as him, where I would also be present as his wife. As she fretted internally about this inevitable collision, little did she know that I had been meticulously documenting evidence for months. With the help of a private investigator, I had gathered every incriminating detail. Text messages between them, financial records showing gifts purchased for her with our joint credit card, hotel receipts, and photos of them together at various locations. So, I had been quietly consulting with divorce attorneys, safeguarding my company assets and making financial preparations for the future. I had transferred a significant portion of our shared savings into my business accounts, which was entirely within the bounds of the law as these were legitimate business investments. This move effectively shielded the funds from Eric in the event of a divorce. The night before the holiday party, Eric was surprisingly attentive. He assisted me in selecting a striking red gown that he believed would make heads turn. He suggested I wear my hair up, revealing my neck in a manner he had always found appealing. I realized he was anxious, likely about the impending night and wanting to ensure I looked my best for the inevitable encounter with his mistress. The irony was poignant. He was prepping his wife to come face to face with his lover, while I was preparing to reveal the truth to his mistress. As I laid out my jewelry for the following evening, Eric received a text. The expression on his face as he read it hinted at. Before regaining his composure, he panicked. Is everything okay? I asked innocently. Fine, he replied hastily. Just work stuff. Always something. Later, while he was showering, I decided to check his phone. The message was from Alexis. I have to attend your company party tomorrow night for work. What should we do? His reply read, Don't worry, my wife will be elsewhere in the room. We won't interact much. Just be professional if we cross paths. She won't suspect a thing. Placing his phone back exactly where I found it, I returned to choosing my earrings for the event the next night. Pieces were in place, The stage was set. Tomorrow would bring change, though not in the way they anticipated. That night, as I went to bed, I felt oddly calm. Instead of confronting them, I had been quietly strategizing for months, turning my pain into plans and my anger into schemes. Convinced of my ignorance, I had been meticulously plotting their downfall with the same precision I used to build my business. Even though I had poured all my energy into my career and neglected my marriage, they were about to realize how underestimated I truly was. The Meridian Financial Holiday Gala took place at the luxurious Grand Hilton downtown, featuring extravagant champagne towers and elegant ice sculptures in an attempt to divert attention from the company's lackluster performance that year. I entered the event on Eric's arm, appearing poised and elegant in my red gown and sophisticated updo. Eric seemed unusually tense, his hand clamped against mine. "You look absolutely stunning tonight," he repeated for the third time since we had left home. "Everyone will be envious that you're accompanying me." I smiled and lightly touched his cheek, replying, "That's kind of you to say, but we both know I'm the fortunate one." His face briefly showed a hint of unease, possibly a mixture of guilt and apprehension. "Let's grab a drink," he suggested, already leading the way to the bar. I scanned the room meticulously and quickly spotted Alexis standing by the entrance in a navy blue dress, her grip on her purse tight with tension. As she hurriedly scanned the room, her eyes landed on Eric at the bar. In that moment, her demeanor shifted imperceptibly. A straightening of her back, a slight raise of her head, the unmistakable body language of a woman catching sight of her lover. But as her gaze moved past him and settled on me standing beside him, a different expression crossed her face. Recognition slowly dawned on her, her eyes widening, her lips parting in surprise. While she'd had seen my photo before, likely on social media or in company materials, encountering me in person on Eric's arm seemed to unsettle her. I chose to ignore her reaction, accepting the glass of champagne Eric offered me, the warm smile that put him at ease. He seemed to think the situation was handled since we hadn't been formally introduced yet. "I should mingle a bit," I mentioned to him, "and meet some of the new executives." Without hesitation, he agreed, visibly relieved. "I also need to touch base with Thomas about the Henderson account." With that, we parted ways, and I observed him immediately busying himself with his phone across the room. Alexis glanced at her own device then. I stood out to the terrace discreetly, opting to observe rather than confront. I engaged Thomas and his wife in a conversation about their recent Bali vacation, all the while keeping an eye on Eric's movements as he briefly joined Alexis before returning inside. The discreet dance between them continued for an hour, for networking as a company representative while he played the charming employee, exchanging meaningful glances. It would have been almost admirable if it wasn't so sad. At precisely 9:30 p.m., I excused myself from a conversation and approached the stage where the CEO was about to give his annual address. I had orchestrated this moment weeks ago, thanks to a favor from the CEO's wife, a former client who admired me. Before we officially began, the CEO announced, "I'd like to welcome Naomi Bennett to say a few words. As many of you are aware, her consulting firm has played a crucial role in the success of several of our subsidiary companies' endeavors this year." A wave of surprise spread through the crowd as I made my unexpected appearance at the podium. Eric, visibly alarmed, watched as I gracefully ascended the steps in my striking red dress, catching the light. "Thank you for the generous introduction," I began, projecting my voice confidently. "It's been a long-standing partnership between Bennett Consulting and Meridian Financial, and I am excited to see it grow in the upcoming year." Pausing for a moment, I scanned the room until my gaze landed on Eric and Alexis. In fact, I have recently onboarded a new marketing strategist who I believe will bring innovation to how companies like Meridian Financial engage with their clients. "Alexis Chen, would you please come up on stage?" A hush fell over the room as Alexis, clearly taken aback, slowly made her way towards the stage, her glass teetering in her hand. Eric, looking stricken, seemed to be in a state of panic as he followed our every move. As she made her way to the stage, it was evident that her professional training was suppressing her personal fears, guiding her up the steps. I greeted her with a warm smile and extended my hand. "Alexis has truly been an exceptional addition to our team," I smoothly addressed the audience. "Her creativity and dedication have not only impressed me, but everyone here." Turning towards her, I maintained my friendly expression. "Alexis, would you like to share your thoughts on the marketing innovations you envision for companies like Meridian?" Caught off guard, she reluctantly took the microphone. Despite the visible tremor in her hands, she managed to deliver a brief, coherent statement about digital marketing strategies. As she concluded, I took back the microphone. "Thank you, Alexis. I am grateful to work alongside such talented individuals," I said, pausing with a meaningful look around the room. Loyalty and honesty are values I hold in high regard, both in business and personal relationships. My gaze then settled on Eric in the audience, who appeared visibly nervous, his anxiety evident in his sweat-drenched appearance. In light of personal relationships, I would like to express my gratitude for my husband, Eric Bennett. Eric, could you please stand up for a moment? Despite his hesitation, he raised his hand, drawing the attention of the room. Reflecting on our 15 years of marriage, I have come to realize the importance of openness in achieving success. Don't you agree, Eric? He nodded slightly, appearing unsure of my intentions. Embracing this transparency, I have an exciting announcement to share. As the room fell silent, Eric seemed on the verge of disbelief, and Alexis was frozen beside me. Bennett Consulting will be launching a new office in London next month, with Alexis being appointed to lead the division, effective immediately. The audience responded with a mix of confusion and polite applause, as they expected a different outcome. Alexis looked at me in astonishment. This presents a significant opportunity, I continued. It involves a minimum commitment of 3 years, substantial salary increase, and a comprehensive relocation package. The necessary paperwork will be provided. Kate is ready. If you're prepared, Alexis, we can sign tonight, I mentioned with a smile that lacked sincerity. Unless, of course, there's something holding you back. Our gazes met, and in that instant, we shared an unspoken understanding. She realized that I was aware of everything, and that I was offering her an opportunity to escape, to start fresh thousands of miles away from the chaotic situation she'd unknowingly entered. I'm grateful, she hesitated. Yes, I agree. The applause grew louder as I firmly shook her hand for the cameras, maintaining a perfect facade. And one more thing, I turned to address the crowd. After much consideration, I have decided to dissolve my personal partnership while strengthening my professional relationships. Eric's expression faltered as my words sunk in. The necessary documents were delivered to our home this afternoon, I added calmly. I am confident that we can handle this transition naturally. Please enjoy the remainder of your evening. I descended the steps, leaving the rest unspoken. The room was filled with a mix of awkward applause and shocked whispers as I stood there. Thomas immediately walked over to me, his expression showing a blend of admiration and discomfort. Naomi, right? I responded innocently, preferring to address business and personal matters efficiently. Meanwhile, Eric was heading towards the exit, phone to his ear, likely seeking advice from his attorney. His colleagues distanced themselves as he passed, already distancing themselves from the situation. Alexis remained on stage, still processing the events. When our eyes met again, I gave her a nod, not forgiveness, but an acknowledgement of the manipulation we both faced from the same man. As I prepared to leave, she approached me cautiously. I didn't know, she said quietly, about who you really are. He painted me as a cold, distant, career-obsessed, emotionally unavailable wife, I finished for her. Yes, I've seen the text. She looked ashamed. The London position is real, I added. In all honesty, the decision is ultimately in your hands, but I recommend carefully contemplating a man who effortlessly deceives both his wife and his mistress. I never meant to cause harm to anyone, she softly admitted, but I simply replied before turning away. She called out, why didn't you just let me go when you discovered the truth? I stopped, pondering her question. Reacting by firing her would have been impulsive, not tactical, and sometimes the most effective repercussions are not the most obvious ones. I left her behind, passing through the hushed conversations and curious gazes of Eric's coworkers, and emerged into the crisp night air for the first time in months. I allowed the weight of the situation to sink in, not only Eric's betrayal but also my own evolution because of it. I had dedicated myself entirely to our marriage, only for it to be treated with disregard. However, by responding in a calculated, strategic, and composed manner, I had regained control over my life, my self-respect, and my future on my own terms. How long have you been aware? I offered no response. Some inquiries don't warrant a reply. 6 months later, I found myself in my London office, gazing at the Thames, going over quarterly projections with my UA team. Ultimately, Alexis had decided to take on the position, a choice that initially surprised me, but eventually seemed fitting. She was seeking to escape her past mistakes, prove her worth professionally, and put a physical distance between herself and Eric. I respected her decision, even if I didn't hold much regard for the person behind it. Our interactions remained strictly professional. I never brought up Eric, and she never attempted to offer any apologies or explanations again. The unspoken agreement between us created an unusual but functional working dynamic, with two women forging ahead independently from the man who had deceived them both. The divorce was finalized swiftly and unexpectedly. Eric, eager to avoid further public humiliation, capitulated to my conditions with minimal resistance. His standing at Meridian had been irreparably tarnished, not due to the affair itself, but because of the way it was handled. Roughly speaking, he had been outwitted by his wife. In the world of finance, men can overlook many flaws, but showing vulnerability is not one of them. I kept getting sporadic updates about him from mutual contacts. He had transitioned to a smaller company, sold our house at a loss, and had started seeing someone new, a younger woman from his gym. Some things never seemed to change. Meanwhile, I had expanded Bennett Consulting to include 3 new international branches, doubled our client base, and bought a modern apartment with a view of Central Park for my visits to our New York office. My life had been completely rebuilt on my own terms, although the pain still lingered. Betrayal leaves lasting marks that may fade with time but never truly vanish. Occasionally, I would wake up in the middle of the night reliving moments from my marriage, searching for clues I might have missed earlier. The difference now was that these moments no longer defined me. They were just fragments of a story that had influenced but not shattered me. On a rainy Tuesday afternoon, I unexpectedly received an email from Alexis in London. The office thrived under her leadership, surpassing projections for the third consecutive quarter. In a personal touch at the end of her detailed report, she included a note. While we may never address what transpired, I want you to know that I have grown from it. Not only professionally, but also personally. You could have brought me down, yet you opted for a different path. That lesson will stay with me. I chose not to respond to the email. Some acknowledgments speak for themselves. Later that evening, I attended a finance industry dinner alone. As I mingled among London's business elite, a distinguished gentleman with silver hair approached me. "Family Bennett?" He asked in a British accent. "Your reputation precedes you. I'm Alexander Harrington from Blackwell Partners." "Nice to meet you," I replied, shaking his hand. "I've heard impressive stories of how you navigate complex situations," he remarked with a knowing smile. Meeting his gaze head on, I said, "I believe in transforming challenges into opportunities, Mr. Harrington. It's just good business." He noted that the principles of effectiveness in business seemed to apply to personal matters as well. I responded affirmatively, emphasizing the importance of assessing situations honestly, crafting strategic responses over emotional reactions, and focusing on long-term goals. He chuckled in appreciation and expressed interest in hearing more about my philosophy, suggesting a dinner sometime. 6 months ago, I would have immediately declined such an offer, still grappling with the pain of betrayal. However, in that moment, I realized a significant transformation within myself. The woman who had once been shattered by betrayal was no longer present. In her place stood a stronger, wiser individual who was firmly in control of her own life. "I'd like that," I replied simply, signaling my willingness to engage further. Later that night, as the rain tapped against my window, I reflected on the unexpected twists and turns that had led me to this moment. In a moment fueled by hurt and anger, I had made the calculated decision to hire my husband's mistress without revealing my true identity. It was a move that spoke to the evolution and empowerment I had undergone, marking a new chapter in my life. I didn't regret any of it, not the months of silent planning, not the calculated confrontation, not even the pain that had initiated it all. Because without that catalyst, I might have continued indefinitely in a marriage built on lies and false security. Instead, I found something more valuable than revenge. I found myself. As I accepted Alexander's dinner invitation, I knew this was just the beginning of my new chapter. Eric and Alexis had given me an unexpected gift, the freedom to rebuild my life entirely on my terms. The perfect revenge wasn't destroying them, it was thriving without them.